Welcome to Listen and Imagine, the YouTube channel where mysterious stories, hidden truths, and mind-bending ideas come to life through captivating narration. Series Secret Moon Bases Exist. Part 1. The Whisper from Space. Why the Moon Isn't What We Were Told. Let me ask you something. If we really went to the moon in 1969 and kept going several more times after that, why did we just stop? Stop. Why would we, after achieving one of the greatest technological milestones in human history, simply call it quits? Think about that. We've had exponential leaps in computing power, robotics, and AI, but somehow we haven't returned in over 50 years? That's not just suspicious, it's a red flag. And maybe, just maybe, it's because there's something up there we're not supposed to see. Body, narrative building with logic. Let's rewind to 1969. The world watched, breath held, as grainy black and white images flickered across TV sets. Neil Armstrong descended the ladder, said his famous line, and the United States won the space race. But here's what most people don't know. During that historic Apollo 11 mission, the astronauts' live broadcast mysteriously cut out for 2 whole minutes. NASA blamed it on a technical glitch, but independent ham radio operators, tuned into the same frequency, claimed they heard something else entirely. Whispers, phrases like, "They're watching us," "They're massive right on the edge of the crater," and then silence. Coincidence? Or a cover-up presenting the case? One man who dared speak out was Carl Wolf, a former U.S. Air Force technician with top-secret clearance. In 1965, he worked at Langley Air Force Base and handled lunar mapping data. Here's what he claimed. He was shown photographs taken by an early lunar orbiter. These were not public images. They showed structures, buildings, towers, domes on the dark side of the moon, not natural formations, not glitches, actual architectural designs. He was told, point blank, "We found a base on the backside of the moon." Let that sink in. This wasn't a conspiracy theorist in his basement. This was a military contractor with clearance. Donna Hare, another NASA insider, told a similar story. She worked for Philco Ford, a NASA subcontractor, on photographic analysis. Her job? Airbrush out anomalies in lunar photos before they were released to the public. Yes, you heard that right. Deliberate editing. She described seeing clear images of flying objects, crafts, hovering over the lunar surface. When she asked about them, her colleagues told her not to speak. One man said he was threatened with losing his pension if he ever talked. She wasn't the only one. Scientific breakdown. What's suspicious here? Let's talk science. By 2025, humanity has sent high-resolution satellites all over Mars, Venus, even Pluto. We've mapped the surface of Mars in 3D. But the moon, the closest celestial body to Earth, is still strangely underdocumented. Why? Most of NASA's moon photos are low-res, grayscale, and taken in the 60s and 70s. The high-res images from LRO, Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, are few, far between, and many are oddly blurry in key locations. On top of that, certain craters seem to have geometrically perfect shapes, hexagonal, rectangular, or with shadow patterns that suggest artificiality. Are we really supposed to believe this is all natural? And why, with the rise of private space tech, are companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin also avoiding detailed lunar imaging? Coincidence, or part of the same silence? Deeper context, the bigger picture. Here's where it gets weirder. Despite the technological capabilities to return to the moon, NASA canceled all future Apollo missions after Apollo 17. They even destroyed the original blueprints for the Saturn V rocket. Yes, destroyed. Wouldn't a historical agency preserve the specs of the most powerful rocket ever built? Unless, of course, the mission succeeded in ways they could never admit publicly. Some theorists believe we didn't stop going to the moon, we just stopped telling people about it. Linking global silence, more suspicion. China, Russia, and even India have launched probes and orbiters toward the moon. But none of them seem eager to release clear public images of the far side or announce any anomalies. Why are competing superpowers staying silent? Space exploration is often about prestige. Yet when it comes to the moon, everyone's oddly quiet. Could it be because there's an unspoken agreement among world governments not to reveal what's really there? Raising unsettling possibilities. If there are indeed secret bases on the moon, there are 2 possibilities. We built them. perhaps as part of military operations, deep black projects, or Cold War espionage. They were already there, structures left behind by an ancient civilization, or worse, still occupied by non-human intelligence. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real reason we never went back. Not because we couldn't, but because we were warned not to. The eerie silence from the astronauts themselves. Have you ever noticed how reluctant the Apollo astronauts are to talk about their missions? Buzz Aldrin, in multiple interviews, has alluded to unexplained sightings. Neil Armstrong, famously private, once said during a White House speech, "There are great ideas undiscovered, breakthroughs available to those who can remove one of truth's protective layers." What protective layers was he talking about? Was it just poetic language or a subtle cry for help? The question no one is asking. If we had the tech to land on the moon with 1960s computers that were less powerful than a modern smartphone, why are we only now starting to plan return missions in the 2020s? What's been stopping us for 5 decades? Ending. What if the real reason we haven't been told the truth is because the moon was never ours to begin with? What if it's not a dead rock, but a watchtower? A silent observer hosting structures, technologies, and perhaps beings far beyond our understanding. So the next time you look up at that glowing orb in the night sky, ask yourself, are we looking at the moon, or is something up there looking back at us? To be continued in Part 2, the Apollo cover-up, what did the astronauts really see? Part 2, the Apollo cover-up, what did the astronauts really see? Let's go back to July 20th, 1969. You know the scene. Neil Armstrong descends the ladder, his voice echoes through history. That's one small step for man. But what most people forget is what happened just moments later. Off the record, transmissions went silent, cameras cut out, there were unexplained gaps in the feed. So here's the question. What did the Apollo 11 astronauts actually see on the surface of the moon that we weren't allowed to hear? Building mystery, the lost mission. According to multiple sources, including former NASA contract amateur radio operators, there was a second audio channel that ran parallel to the public broadcast. This was a classified communication line, supposedly used for emergencies or internal dialogue. And what came through that channel on July 20th is chilling. Several ham radio enthusiasts claim to have intercepted the uncensored feed. One of them, Otto Binder, a NASA insider, reported that Armstrong saw something just beyond the crater's edge. His alleged words, "They're here, and they're watching us." They're enormous. I'm telling you, there are other spacecraft out here lined up on the far side of the crater. Moments later, radio silence. Then the normal broadcast resumed. Coincidence, glitch, or deliberate censorship, first-hand accounts, and eerie avoidance. Now let's talk about Neil Armstrong himself. He rarely gave interviews. He avoided the press for most of his life. But in 1994, at a White House event commemorating the Apollo missions, he said this, "There are great ideas undiscovered, breakthroughs available to those who can remove one of truth's protective layers." What did he mean by truth's protective layers? Was he talking about the science of space, or something much more literal? Buzz Aldrin, on the other hand, has made several cryptic remarks over the years. In a 2005 interview, he openly admitted they saw something outside the module window, an object that appeared to follow them in orbit around the moon. NASA brushed it off as sunlight on a panel, but Aldrin insisted it was not part of our rocket. That's all I can say. Case study, Apollo 11's missing minutes. Let's focus on those 2 missing minutes. At the exact moment Armstrong steps onto the surface, the live feed cuts. NASA blamed it on a signal overload. But according to former NASA engineer Maurice Chatelain, the truth was much more unsettling. He claimed the feed was intentionally jammed because Armstrong began describing objects on the moon that weren't supposed to be there. Massive metallic structures, strange shadows, something or someone watching. This wasn't just from Apollo 11. Several Apollo missions encountered similar moments of silence, unexplained signal loss, or transmission interference. If this happened once, maybe it's a glitch. But if it happened multiple times across missions and years, that's a pattern. Scientific plausibility. Can things be hidden on the moon? Now you might be wondering, how could anything be hidden on the moon? There's no atmosphere, no cover. no trees, no caves. But here's what most people don't know. The moon has lava tubes, massive underground tunnel systems created by ancient volcanic activity. Some of them are wide enough to house entire cities. NASA themselves have confirmed their existence. In 2020, the Japanese space agency JAXA mapped several of these subsurface caverns. They're stable, protected, and perfect for hiding anything. And what about the surface? The moon is covered in regolith, a fine dust layer that reflects light inconsistently. This makes shadows extremely difficult to analyze. Optical illusions or intelligent camouflage? Some satellite images show structures that appear angular, symmetrical, qualities not found in natural geology. So if there were bases on the moon, above or below ground, they could easily be concealed. Testimonies NASA won't talk about. There's another name you should know, Ken Johnston. He was a NASA data and photo control officer during the Apollo missions. His job was to catalog and archive lunar imagery. According to Ken, many original photos were altered before being released to the public. When he objected to the deletions, images showing domes, towers, and unidentified objects, he was pressured to resign. He later leaked several original Apollo photos that clearly show strange anomalies on the horizon. NASA claimed they were processing errors, but photographic experts say otherwise. These images were deliberately airbrushed. If there was nothing to hide, why edit them at all? Other Apollo missions, same strange stories. Apollo 12, Apollo 14, Apollo 16. Each of these missions had astronauts who described odd events, moments when they felt they were being watched. Alan Bean of Apollo 12 once said in a post-mission interview, "You just get this sense that you're not alone, like there's something out there just beyond the next ridge." That's not science fiction. That's a man who walked on the moon and came back with more questions than answers. Even Apollo 17, NASA's final moon mission, ended with a mysterious early termination. Why? Officially, equipment issues. Unofficially, some say the crew reported strange flashes of light, pulses, coming from beyond the mountains of Taurus Littrow. Why, for example, was all live video feed from the moon routed through a single tracking station in Australia, where it could be edited before being released? Why were the original moon landing tapes erased by NASA in 2006? That's right, the only known master tapes of the Apollo 11 landing accidentally recorded over. Are we really to believe the most important footage in human history was reused to save money? Or was it because what was on those tapes wasn't meant to be seen? Michael Collins, the command module pilot of Apollo 11, spent more time orbiting the moon alone than any other human. When asked later if he ever saw anything strange, his response was always vague. "I felt watched, not in a bad way, just not alone." Is it possible they were under oath, bound by non-disclosure agreements, military protocols? If the astronauts saw evidence of extraterrestrial life or secret installations, would they even be allowed to talk? Closing, drawing the viewer deeper. What if the Apollo missions didn't just find rocks and dust? What if they found evidence of something bigger, older, more advanced, something not from Earth? And what if NASA decided that the public just wasn't ready? Maybe the silence of the astronauts isn't because they have nothing to say. Maybe it's because they saw everything and knew the world couldn't handle it. So the next time you look up at the moon and see that calm, pale surface, ask yourself, did we go to the moon to explore or to deliver a message? And more importantly, who was the message for? To be continued in Part 3, Structures on the Far Side, NASA's Darkest Secret. Part 3, Structures on the Far Side, NASA's Darkest Secret. When you look up at the moon from your backyard, you're always seeing the same face. That's not poetic, it's physics. The moon is tidally locked to Earth. That means one side always faces us, while the far side remains hidden, forever turned away from view. So here's the question. What's on the far side of the moon, and why has NASA been so reluctant to explore it? The Forbidden Hemisphere. Officially, NASA has mapped the entire lunar surface using satellites and orbiters. But look closely and you'll notice something odd. High-resolution images of the near side are abundant, but on the far side, blurred, incomplete, missing frames. Why? Is it due to technical limitations or intentional obfuscation? Now consider this. The Soviet Union was the first to photograph the far side in 1959 using Luna 3. But even their images showed strange protrusions, tower-like anomalies, and unnatural shadows. And almost immediately, their mission data went dark. Coincidence? Or was something discovered that no one wanted to talk about? The radar anomaly, the tower. In 1968, just before Apollo 8 orbited the moon, NASA used Earth-based radar to scan the far side. They discovered a vertical structure, estimated to be over a mile high, jutting from the surface near the Daedalus crater. This wasn't just a rock. Radar imaging showed it had symmetry, flat edges, right angles. Some engineers nicknamed it the spire. Others referred to it simply as the tower. NASA denied it existed. But oddly, they never released the raw radar data. What kind of natural formation stands 1 mile high on the airless surface of the moon and casts no consistent shadow? Lunar orbiter images and the missing pixels. In 1967, before astronauts ever landed on the moon, the Lunar Orbiter program photographed over 99% of the surface, but several images from the far side showed what looked like massive geometric domes, angular walls, hexagonal patterns stretching miles across. Former NASA scientist Mark Carlotto, an image specialist, analyzed some of these photographs. He concluded that certain features had statistical anomalies inconsistent with random terrain. In other words, they didn't look natural. They looked built. Shortly after his report went public, NASA reclassified several image sets and quietly took them offline. The Chinese rover mystery. In 2019, China's Chand 4 mission became the first spacecraft to land on the far side of the moon. It carried the Yutu-2 rover, equipped with radar, cameras, and a ground-penetrating system. And then something strange happened. Early images sent back showed a cube-shaped structure on the horizon. Chinese state media dubbed it the Mystery Hut. Global headlines followed. UFO enthusiasts celebrated. But when the rover got closer, the object was gone, reclassified as a rock formation and quickly forgotten. Yet no detailed photos, no raw telemetry, no open-source radar data. The public was shown one blurry photo, then silence. Does that sound like transparency to you? Why the far side is perfect for a secret base. Let's talk logistics. The far side of the moon is completely shielded from Earth-based radio signals. That makes it the ideal location for secret military installations, advanced research bases, or extraterrestrial outposts. In fact, NASA and the Pentagon have openly discussed the idea of building a radio-silent listening post on the far side, precisely because no Earth signal can reach it. If we're talking about hiding something, whether human or alien, you couldn't ask for a better spot. And let's not forget the permanent shadow zones inside deep craters. Temperatures drop to -400 degrees Fahrenheit. Sunlight never touches them. Anything hidden there would be practically invisible to infrared or optical sensors. Testimony from Air Force insiders. Dr. Carl Wolf, a former U.S. Air Force technician, gave a public statement in 2001. He claimed to have seen classified lunar photographs in 1965 while working at Langley Air Force Base. The photos, he said, showed huge structures on the far side of the moon, towers, domes, and what looked like a power station. He wasn't alone. Sergeant Carl O'Keefe, another Air Force radar tech, reported that his team once tracked moving objects circling the moon's far side, objects that changed direction and speed, behavior inconsistent with satellites or debris. Are all these military professionals lying? Or are they trying to tell us the truth, that someone or something is already there? Scientific excuses or subtle cover-up? NASA and other agencies often blame the lack of far-side data on budget cuts, data loss, communication limitations. But that doesn't hold up. Private companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin have the tech to orbit and image the far side with stunning detail. So why haven't they? Could it be that even private enterprises are under pressure or contractually bound to stay quiet? Here's where it gets even stranger. There's a long-standing rumor among insiders that in 1954, the U.S. government signed an extraterrestrial agreement, a non-interference pact. According to this theory, certain lunar zones were declared off-limits in exchange for access to alien tech. Outlandish? Maybe. But consider this. Why did NASA abandon manned missions to the moon after 1972? Why have we never returned to the far side with humans? Not even once. We can land billion-dollar rovers on Mars. We can send probes to Saturn. But somehow the closest celestial body, only 3 days away, remains mysteriously unexplored. ending, the lingering silence. The moon's far side remains silent, not because there's nothing there, but perhaps because what's there isn't meant for us to see. Maybe it's ancient, maybe it's alien, or maybe it's something we built and forgot. Uh, the silence isn't natural, it's intentional. And the next time you look at the moon, just remember, half of it is always hidden. And what hides in the dark often hides for a reason. Coming next in part 4, Lunar Anomalies, NASA can't explain the photos they tried to erase. Part 4, Lunar Anomalies, NASA can't explain the photos they tried to erase. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. But what if certain pictures were never meant to be seen? Over the past 60 years, hundreds of lunar photographs have been quietly edited, buried, or, more shockingly, scrubbed from existence. And the ones that slip through the cracks, they show things no crater, rock, or natural feature can explain. Ask yourself, if there's nothing to hide, why hide the images? The strange case of AS50P9625, the shard. Let's begin with a photograph that NASA actually published, though not without controversy. AS50P9625, taken during the Apollo 15 mission, shows a jagged vertical structure rising from the lunar surface. It's become known as the shard. The object appears to be over 1.5 miles tall, casting a long, sharp shadow made of a semi-transparent material. NASA has never offered a detailed explanation. They call it an imaging artifact. But high-resolution analysis reveals consistent lighting angles, a clear base anchored to the surface, and geometric features that are not random. Is it possible this is a natural crystal formation, or is it the remnant of an artificial structure, eroded by time? The Castle, Apollo 10 anomaly. During the Apollo 10 mission, astronaut Eugene Cernan photographed something utterly bizarre, later called the Castle. It was suspended above the moon's surface, casting a detached shadow. Let that sink in, a massive object floating with its own light reflection pattern and no visible support. Cernan reportedly commented over the radio, "There's something out there that's just incredible." NASA's transcript? Redacted. And when independent researchers requested the original film under the Freedom of Information Act, NASA claimed it was lost. How do you lose spaceflight negatives? Airbrushing on a cosmic scale. Donna Hare, a former NASA contractor, made headlines in the early 2000s with a bombshell claim. She worked at NASA's photo lab in Building 8 at the Johnson Space Center. According to her sworn testimony, her job involved airbrushing out structures from lunar images before they were made public. She once saw a photo of a perfectly shaped dome sitting inside a crater. A coworker warned her, "You never saw that, and if you talk about it, you'll lose your clearance." She also claimed that guards carried guns inside the photo lab. That's not standard for civilian science work. What exactly were they protecting? The Clementine mission blackout. In 1994, the Pentagon, yes, the Department of Defense, launched the Clementine mission, officially to map the moon's surface. Over 1.8 million images were taken. But here's the problem. Roughly 400,000 images have never been released. Some were lost. Others were corrupted. When researchers accessed NASA's Clementine browser, they found black squares, blurry zones, and entire regions of the moon with missing tiles. And wouldn't you know it, many of those missing tiles, they were in areas already rumored to house anomalous structures. The ancient satellite dish, Copernicus crater, one of the most shocking anomalies, lies within the Copernicus crater. An enhanced lunar orbiter photo shows what appears to be a parabolic dish-like shape with spokes and a central cone, roughly the size of a football stadium. Amateur astronomers who've studied the image have compared it to a broken radio telescope, or something that looks very much like a transmission array. NASA's explanation? Natural collapse of a rock dome. But what natural dome forms with perfect radial symmetry, a central point, and concentric rings? The odds are astronomical. Even Google Moon shows strange stuff. You can go see this yourself. Go to Google Moon, a digital map powered by NASA's own satellite imagery. Enter the following coordinates: 22 degree 42 3846 N, 142 degree 3044.52 E. You'll find a triangular formation buried deep in Mare Moscoviense. Sharp edges, right angles, a perfectly straight line connecting three peaks. It looks like a delta-shaped craft or a buried structure. Still not convinced? Try 27342635 ends 19-36 at 4.75. A rectangular shadow is cast on a flat plane with no visible object present. Some speculate it's a camouflaged hatch, part of a buried entrance. Is it glitchy image stitching or something that was digitally hidden, but not quite well enough? NASA's favorite excuse, pareidolia. Whenever these photos surface, NASA typically gives the same answer. It's pareidolia, the human tendency to see patterns in random noise. But let's get real. Seeing a bunny in a cloud, that's pareidolia. Seeing a 100-foot wide hexagon with a central beam, that's not your imagination, especially when the geometry is mathematically precise and shows up in multiple independent photos taken years apart. At some point, coincidence becomes statistical impossibility. Modern imaging, the lies don't hold up anymore. With modern tech, amateur astronomers can now photograph the moon in high resolution using home telescopes and digital overlays. They're finding repeating structures on the rims of craters, symmetrical patterns in lava plains, glowing anomalies near the poles, some that seem to move. NASA has stopped responding to public inquiries about these. And every time someone digs too deep, websites go down, images get updated, YouTube videos disappear. Is it all just noise, or is someone scrubbing the signal? We live in a world where billions of photos are shared every day. But when it comes to our nearest celestial neighbor, the photo album is strangely empty, and what's left is full of holes. So ask yourself, why do official lunar images contain black bars, missing pixels, and anomalies? Why were certain negatives lost after being stored in climate-controlled government archives? Why do independent researchers keep finding patterns that NASA says are just shadows and tricks of light? Maybe the moon isn't just a dead rock. Maybe it's not just about what's up there. It's about who doesn't want us to see it. Coming next in Part 5, Whispers from the Moon, Radio Transmissions That Defy Logic. Part 5, Whispers from the Moon, Radio Transmissions That Defy Logic. What happens on the moon doesn't always stay on the moon. Since the early days of space exploration, astronauts, mission control staff, and even amateur radio operators have reported something strange. Voices, tones, transmissions, sometimes garbled, sometimes too clear, and sometimes inexplicably intelligent. Could it be radio interference? Or is someone or something already up there and not too keen on being alone? The Apollo 10 music incident. What did they really hear? Let's rewind to May 1969. Apollo 10 is orbiting the moon, preparing for the final test before humanity's first lunar landing. Suddenly, the astronauts begin hearing an eerie sound, a whistling, rhythmic tone coming through their headsets. They describe it as outer space-type music. Here's the kicker. They were on the far side of the moon, completely out of contact with Earth. No radio interference, no NASA communication, no crosstalk. For an entire hour, the sound continued. Unexplained. NASA eventually dismissed it as VHF interference between the lunar module and command module. But former Apollo astronaut Al Worden didn't buy it. In an interview decades later, he said, "Logic tells me if there was something recorded on there, then there was something there." What kind of interference produces complex harmonics and looping rhythms? And why was the transcript classified for decades? Buzz Aldrin's mystery transmission, "They're watching us." During Apollo 11, as Armstrong and Aldrin descended to the lunar surface, a private transmission was allegedly sent to NASA, overheard by several amateur radio operators listening in on VHF backup channels. What was said? According to leaked reports, "These babies are huge, sir. Enormous. They're on the other side of the crater, watching us." NASA, of course, denied such a transmission ever occurred. But Aldrin, when asked years later about the possibility of alien observation, gave this cryptic reply, "There are things out there, we just chose not to talk about them." He never outright denied the story. He just pivoted away. Why not simply say, "It didn't happen"? Soviet secrets, what Luna missions picked up. The Americans weren't the only ones listening. The Soviet Union's Luna missions, especially Luna 20 and 24, recorded low-frequency radio pulses on the moon's surface, pulses with no clear geological source. In 1976, a Soviet cosmonaut admitted off the record, "We intercepted something that wasn't natural, and we weren't alone in orbit." To this day, portions of the Luna mission data remain classified by Rosmos. Why would an old Soviet mission keep lunar data secret in the post-Cold War world? unless it contained something destabilizing. Amateur radio operators, the accidental witnesses. Here's where it gets even more compelling. During every manned Apollo mission, shortwave and ham radio operators around the world tuned in. Some picked up parallel transmissions, not broadcast through official NASA channels. One man, Robert Merritt, recorded what he claimed was an off-frequency exchange between Apollo 17 and Mission Control. "We're approaching the north edge. Marked structure visible. Repeat, marked structure visible." His tapes were seized by authorities within a week. When he tried to recover them via legal means, he was told they had been destroyed in error. Another radio hobbyist in Australia picked up a 3-tone transmission looping every 47 seconds, coming from the moon's southern pole, days before NASA publicly announced discovering water ice in that region. Coincidence? Or surveillance? The moon has no magnetic field but reflects radio like a satellite. From a scientific standpoint, the moon shouldn't be reflecting Earth-based radio signals as strongly as it does. Unlike Earth, the moon has no atmosphere, no ionosphere, no magnetic field. And yet, radio engineers have noted strong echoes, bouncing, and even signal distortions when transmitting toward the moon. Some researchers have speculated this could indicate the presence of subsurface metallic structures, a conductive layer beneath the regolith, or even artificial reflectors. Dr. Armin Loeb of Harvard has gone on record saying, "There is no reason why, from a physics standpoint, radar signals should behave this way on the moon, unless there is something hidden beneath." Strange signals from the moon's dark side, the moon dial loop. In 2013, China's Chang'e 3 mission landed on the moon. Unofficial reports from Chinese engineers described an event they dubbed moon dial, a looped pulse received when the lander was on the far side with a perfect 23.56-minute cycle. It didn't match any known radio emission. It wasn't from Earth. It wasn't from the sun. It wasn't natural. They tried broadcasting back. There was no reply. But the signal continued for 3 more days, then suddenly stopped. Why hasn't China made this public? Why did later missions remain silent about such anomalies? The message encoded in lunar echoes? There's an even more bizarre theory, controversial, yes, but fascinating. Some cryptographers believe that delayed echoes bouncing off the moon show non-random modulation, as if the returning signals are responding. Mathematician Paul Vigneault analyzed patterns from 1960s radar tests and found that certain frequencies bounced back with phase shifts that mirrored Morse code. He claimed to have decoded a fragment. "We see, you cannot land here." Ludicrous or chillingly direct? Why silence the moon's voice? NASA stopped manned lunar missions after Apollo 17. That's nearly 50 years ago. Despite massive technological advances, we haven't returned. Meanwhile, signals continue to bounce, amateur recordings continue to emerge, governments remain silent. If there's nothing there, why aren't we going back? And if there is something there, is it sending messages we've been ordered to ignore? Part 6, the moon's hidden entrance. What lies beneath the South Pole? It's one of the darkest, coldest, and most mysterious places in our solar system, the lunar South Pole, a region cloaked in perpetual shadow, a place where sunlight hasn't touched the surface for billions of years, a place where temperatures drop to minus 400 degrees Fahrenheit. And yet, NASA, China, and even private companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin are racing, urgently, to land there. Why? What could possibly be so valuable in the most inhospitable spot on the moon? Or, the better question, what are they really looking for down there? The Shackleton Crater, nature's perfect hiding spot. At the heart of the lunar South Pole lies Shackleton Crater, a vast 13-mile-wide depression that never sees sunlight. NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, LRO, has mapped this region in detail. What they found is puzzling. Radar scans showed unusual reflections beneath the surface. Thermal sensors detected localized heat sources in certain pockets. And strangely, some scans suggested geometric structures, as if hollow chambers or corridors existed beneath the ice. NASA attributed these anomalies to possible water ice deposits. But here's what they didn't say publicly. Some radar signals bounce back in patterns too regular to be natural. Imagine a perfect rectangular reflection buried under 10 feet of regolith. Ice doesn't do that. Machined metal does. India's Chandrayaan-1 discovery, a magnetic mystery. In 2009, India's Chandrayaan-1 orbiter passed over the South Pole and made a startling discovery. Despite the moon lacking a global magnetic field, the spacecraft detected strong, localized magnetic anomalies in the Shackleton region, signals far too strong for simple rock formations. This led to a bold hypothesis by several Indian scientists. There may be ferromagnetic materials buried beneath the lunar South Pole. Let's pause right there. Ferromagnetic materials, like iron alloys, nickel, or titanium composites, are man-made structural materials. They're what we use to build aircraft and underground bases. So how did they end up buried in one of the most isolated spots on the moon? The lunar lava tube theory, or secret tunnels. Many scientists believe the moon's volcanic past created massive lava tubes, hollow tunnels large enough to fit entire cities. The South Pole, due to its terrain, is one of the most likely regions to contain these tubes. NASA even commissioned studies on the feasibility of building a base inside one, using the natural tunnels as shelter. But here's the twist. Some documents from early Apollo-era studies, declassified in 2017, show that NASA already suspected these tunnels were not entirely natural. One line stood out. Artificial modifications to existing cavities cannot be ruled out. Modifications by whom? The 2020 NASA Artemis pivot. Why the sudden change in landing site? Originally, NASA's Artemis program targeted equatorial sites for the next manned moon landing. But in 2020, that plan abruptly changed. The new target? The South Pole, specifically near Shackleton Crater. No explanation, no public debate, just a decision. Why shift a multi-billion-dollar mission to a place so difficult to land in? NASA claimed it was for water harvesting and long-term survival planning. But experts questioned the logic. Water ice exists in other places too, and they're much easier to access. So again, we ask, what's so special about this spot? The secret probe, Clementine's missing data. In 1994, a joint mission between NASA and the Department of Defense launched the Clementine spacecraft. Its goal, to map the moon in high resolution and search for water ice. But then, something strange happened. As Clementine passed over the South Pole, one of its imaging systems failed, cutting off full-spectrum scans of the region. The public was told it was a technical glitch. But insiders from the Ballistic Missile Defense Organization, which helped run the mission, later claimed, the failure wasn't accidental. We were told not to publish data from the South Pole pass. Why would the Department of Defense be involved in a moon mapping mission anyway, unless there was something strategically important up there? China's race to the pole, military ambitions, or ancient secrets? China's Chang'e 6, 7, and upcoming Chang'e 8 missions are all focused on the South Pole. Beijing has stated publicly it wants to build a base there by 2030, but leaked Chinese academic papers hint at something deeper. One translated line reads, "Our geological imaging has revealed unexplained cavities and heat signatures. Further analysis may yield non-terrestrial architecture." Non-terrestrial architecture? That's not scientific code for rocks. Elon Musk's mysterious tweets, what does he know? In 2023, Elon Musk tweeted, "The moon's South Pole is more than it appears. There's a reason they don't teach everything in geology class." Later, when asked if SpaceX would land Starship there, he replied cryptically, "We're not ready for what's under the surface." Was he joking? Or warning? Musk is known for his strange humor, but also for dropping hints. And when it comes to off-world secrets, he seems to know more than he says. The dark access point theory. One of the most persistent theories among lunar conspiracy researchers is this. Somewhere inside Shackleton Crater lies an entrance to a vast underground complex, possibly constructed by an ancient non-human intelligence. This theory is supported by repeated anomalies in radar scans, the sudden interest of global powers, the pattern of radio silences in this zone, and reports of transient lunar phenomena, TLPs. Brief flashes of light or movement seen from Earth, clustered near the pole. Could these be airlocks opening? Could heat signatures be signs of operational systems still running? Final thoughts? What's waiting inside? Let's ask the obvious. If there were a hidden base beneath the South Pole, would we even be told? Or would governments and corporations quietly claim it, studying it, reverse engineering it, hiding it? Would you believe them if they said, "There's nothing there," while spending billions to go exactly there? Part 7, NASA's Lost Files, The deleted missions they don't talk about. Every organization has secrets, but when that organization is NASA, a public agency funded by taxpayers, you'd think their missions would be transparent, right? You'd think every mission to the moon would be part of the public record. You'd expect every photograph, every scan, every audio file to be archived. But here's the truth. Dozens of hours of audio and video from NASA's Apollo era are missing. Entire mission logs have been redacted or destroyed, and a few proposed missions vanished without a trace. So the question is, what was so dangerous or so revealing that they had to erase it from history? The Apollo 20 myth, or was it? Let's start with the infamous Apollo 20. Officially, NASA canceled this mission in 1970 due to budget cuts. It never launched, never landed, never happened. But in 2007, a series of mysterious videos surfaced on YouTube, allegedly leaked by a man named William Rutledge, claiming to be an ex-NASA astronaut. These grainy videos show footage from a cockpit labeled Apollo 20, a gigantic structure near the moon's Delport crater, a long, cigar-shaped craft seemingly half-buried in lunar soil, and most controversially, a humanoid figure inside the craft, dubbed the Mona Lisa EB. NASA called it all a hoax. But digital forensics experts discovered that the videos were made using technology from the 1990s, not 2007, before deepfakes were possible. So here's the catch. If it was fake, who made it? And why bother with such detail? And if it was real, then what exactly did Apollo 20 find? Redacted transcripts. What were the astronauts really saying? Many people have read the official transcripts of the Apollo missions, but few know about the edited versions. Take Apollo 17, the final official mission to the moon. The original comms included a segment where Commander Eugene Cernan says, "That's enough, turn off the camera. God, you won't believe it." Then, transmission cuts. When the public version was released, that entire sequence was removed. Why? NASA claimed it was due to interference in the signal, but audio engineers have since confirmed the cutoff was intentional, not technical. So again, we ask, what did they see that we weren't supposed to? The moon tower photos, quietly pulled from public access. In the early 2000s, amateur researchers digging through NASA's photo archives found something strange in images from Lunar Orbiter 3. One photo, labeled LO384M, shows a vertical structure casting a shadow that suggests it's over a mile tall. This tower sits near the moon's sinus midi region and appears perfectly cylindrical. Within weeks of the photo gaining attention online, NASA pulled it from their public servers. Today, only mirrored copies remain, mostly on conspiracy forums and old FTP backups. NASA's explanation? Data corruption caused visual artifacts, but shadow analysis done by independent astrophysicists showed that the tower's shadow aligns perfectly with lunar sunlight at the time the image was taken. In other words, it was real. So who built it? Project Horizon, the U.S. Army's secret moon base. In 1959, a document surfaced called Project Horizon. Drafted by the U.S. Army, it outlined plans to build a permanent military base on the moon by 1966. The documents weren't classified, they were declassified decades later. It called for a manned base with 12 soldiers, nuclear power for sustainability, and the capability to launch nuclear missiles from the lunar surface. It sounds like science fiction until you realize the engineering blueprints were real. The question is, if this was the plan in 1959, what did they actually build by the time Apollo 11 landed in 1969? What if some version of Project Horizon quietly continued under black budget operations? The Clementine conundrum again. We mentioned the Clementine mission in Part 6, but there's more to it. Launched in 1994, Clementine mapped the entire moon in multiple wavelengths. Oddly, only 60% of the data was ever released. The rest? Lost. Misplaced. Corrupted, according to officials. Why would the Department of Defense, with help from the Strategic Defense Initiative, run a planetary mapping mission? What were they really scanning for? Some former defense contractors allege Clementine was designed to locate underground cavities on the moon, specifically those that reflected microwave radiation differently than normal rock. In other words, artificial spaces. So, what did they find in the South Pole scans that we were never shown? In a 2016 interview, Apollo 11 astronaut Buzz Aldrin, now in his 80s, was asked about the moon's South Pole. His response was, "Unusual. There's something there. I won't say what, but it's watching." He smiled, then said no more. Was he joking? Suffering from age-related confusion? Or was he deliberately vague to avoid violating a classified agreement? 9. In 2009, NASA admitted that it accidentally erased the original footage of the Apollo 11 moon landing. That's right, the greatest human achievement in history. Overwritten. The tapes were reused to save money. But behind closed doors, some say it wasn't an accident. Former archivists came forward saying they were ordered to destroy specific boxes labeled with Apollo Deep Comms, material never released to the public. One box was labeled S-band telemetry, polar region, SHK sector, restricted. Why delete telemetry from a zone that officially was never visited? Why hide the truth? If you're asking yourself, why would NASA erase its own history? Think of this. Admitting the presence of alien structures could cause global panic. Acknowledging a military lunar base could violate international law. Revealing a cover-up spanning 60 years could destroy trust in science. But maybe the biggest reason? Some truths are simply too powerful to reveal. Final thoughts. Were we ever told the whole story? Every missing photo, every redacted file, every glitch, they add up. Together, they paint a picture, not of incompetence, but of careful omission. So ask yourself, are we really alone on the moon? Or have we always known and chosen silence? Part 8. Whispers from the Moon. Insider leaks and whistleblower testimonies. Every secret has a leak. Even the tightest conspiracies have a crack. A moment when someone speaks. And when it comes to the moon, some of those voices come from very unexpected places. Former NASA engineers, military intelligence officers, even astronauts themselves. So today we ask, why are so many insiders hinting, sometimes even shouting, that we're not being told the whole truth about the moon? And more importantly, what exactly did they see? The Ken Johnston revelation, NASA's photo librarian. Ken Johnston isn't your average conspiracy theorist. He was a civilian contractor for NASA during the Apollo missions, tasked with handling and preserving original photographic data. But in 2007, Ken made a bold claim that he was ordered to destroy photos showing artificial structures on the moon, that he refused and kept some of them. He later went public, revealing images of strange dome-like objects, perfect geometric patterns, and tall spire-like structures casting shadows inconsistent with natural formations. NASA's response? Silence. They never officially discredited him, but they also never denied the existence of the photos. Ken was let go from his post, and his story quietly pushed to the margins. But if he was lying, why did NASA react like he told the truth? Dr. Eric Norton, solar defense consultant's stunning claim. In 2014, Dr. Eric Norton, an alleged consultant for the U.S. Department of Defense, appeared in a series of anonymous interviews. He claimed that in 2012, using infrared telescope arrays in Hawaii, he detected a massive fleet of objects moving toward Earth from the direction of the moon. According to him, the objects appeared to be geometrically structured and showed heat signatures not found in asteroids or space debris. He was told to stay silent. But later, after being pushed out of his consulting role, he gave an ominous warning. They're watching us, not from far away, but from our own backyard. To this day, no formal institution has confirmed or denied Norton's employment or his claims. So, was he a hoaxer or just someone who saw too much? The military contractor who found airlocks. In 1998, a defense contractor, using LiDAR scans from the Clementine mission, reported anomalies near the moon's south pole. He spoke anonymously on a coast-to-coast AM radio show, identifying himself only as Project Sentinel. According to him, the data showed regular thermal fluctuations that resembled airlocks opening and closing, heat pulses consistent with engineered structures cycling pressure. The strange part? NASA soon discontinued public access to that sector's LiDAR data within days of the episode airing. Coincidence or containment? Astronaut Gordon Cooper, they are watching us. Gordon Cooper, one of NASA's original Mercury 7 astronauts, was known for his candid opinions. He openly stated that, "I believe alien spacecraft are visiting Earth. I saw them, I tracked them, and I know other astronauts who did too." He also hinted that some moon missions might have encountered anomalous presences. Though he never confirmed direct sightings on the moon, his repeated allusions to non-human intelligence in space added fuel to a growing fire. Remember, Cooper was a decorated astronaut, test pilot, and engineer, not someone easily fooled. So what did he really know? The Russian leak? Moon base confrontation? In 2015, a leak from a retired Russian military officer claimed that a Soviet lunar probe launched in the late 1970s had detected radio frequencies from a specific crater on the far side of the moon. The frequencies resembled encrypted military communication protocols, but not Russian. Soon after, the probe went dark, lost forever. The Russian military suspected U.S. involvement, according to the leak. But if the U.S. had no base on the far side, what was sending the signals? And why destroy a probe just for listening? The hacker who broke in, Gary McKinnon, a Scottish systems administrator, became world famous for hacking into NASA and U.S. military systems in the early 2000s. What did he claim to find? A list of non-terrestrial officers, logs of spacecraft not listed in public databases, and images of strange cigar-shaped structures orbiting above the moon. He described one image as showing a large structure on the moon with metallic tubes connected by angular corridors. NASA called it fiction. The U.S. government tried for 10 years to extradite him under anti-terror laws. If he was just a basement nerd chasing UFO stories, why go to such extremes to silence him? Edward Snowden, the famed NSA whistleblower, released a trove of surveillance documents in 2013. Most were about government spying on civilians. But some researchers believe that certain encrypted files, never publicly decoded, may relate to off-planet operations. Snowden has refused to comment on those claims. Was that silence a coincidence, or a line even he wouldn't cross? Why whistleblowers wait decades? Many insiders don't speak up until they're near death or retired. Why? Legal threats under non-disclosure agreements, fear of being labeled mentally unstable, genuine concern for their lives and their families. But when they do speak, their stories all point to the same idea, that the moon is not a barren rock, that it holds secrets, structures, operations, technologies, not meant for public eyes. Conclusion: what if they're all telling the truth? It's easy to dismiss one man's story. Maybe he lied, maybe he was confused, maybe he wanted attention. But dozens of voices, over 50 years, across nations, departments, agencies, that's not noise, that's a pattern. So now we must ask, why are these people willing to risk everything to talk about the moon? What did they see that shook them so deeply? And how long can the silence last before the world finally listens? Part 9, the reverse engineering theory. Did we bring alien tech back from the moon? What if the moon wasn't just a destination, but a pickup site? For decades, whispers have grown louder that NASA and possibly private defense firms have returned from lunar missions with more than just rock samples, not natural resources, not moon dust, technology, intelligent design, and maybe even something alive. Let's ask the big question. Did we find alien tech on the moon? And are we using it now, right under our noses? The Apollo cover story, we stopped going. In 1972, Apollo 17 marked the last manned mission to the moon. Officially, we stopped because of budget cuts and waning public interest. But does that make sense? In 1969, we had the world glued to black and white TV screens. The US had just won the greatest race in human history. So why suddenly quit? Unless the real mission wasn't about exploration anymore. Unless, after Apollo 17, the moon became a classified zone with a new, covert purpose. What did they find? Leaked images and mission audio. Insiders and analysts have pointed to anomalies in Apollo 15 and 17 surface photos, mission logs with missing minutes, transmissions where astronauts appear to see structures on the horizon, followed by radio silence. In one alleged leak from Apollo 17, an astronaut whispers, "We're not alone up here." It was supposedly edited out of the public transcripts. Why? What could they have seen that warranted scrubbing official records? Recovered materials, the unknown alloys. In 2009, a retired metallurgist named R. Jenkins, name withheld, claimed to have analyzed a sample that came from a government contractor connected to Apollo payloads. What he found: an alloy with molecular bonds unknown in current metallurgical databases, material that exhibited non-Newtonian properties under certain EM fields, and, most strangely, evidence of self-repairing nanostructure layers. He was later silenced by legal threats and gag orders, but others have hinted at the same. We've had access to alien materials, and we've tried to copy them. Where did the tech go? The black projects theory. If we recovered alien technology, where did it go? Many researchers point to US black budget programs, military R&D efforts that are totally off the books, funded by billions annually, hidden under names like DARPA, Lockheed Skunk Works, or Northrop Grumman, deep space programs. Some claim these black projects have electromagnetic propulsion systems, gravity manipulation devices, directed energy weapons modeled after tech not from Earth. And if you think that sounds like science fiction, why are so many patents filed under classified programs in those exact categories? Private companies in the shadows. In the 2000s, companies like SpaceX, Blue Origin, and others began private space exploration. But some believe they're not truly independent. Instead, they may act as fronts, intentionally or not, for reverse engineering efforts based on what's already been found. Insiders have pointed to exotic propulsion patents filed by aerospace engineers with ties to lunar missions. One engineer, working for a major private firm, anonymously claimed, "The moon isn't the end goal. It was just the first site. The tech came from there, but it's being tested here." Back-engineered breakthroughs on Earth? Let's look at a timeline. 1973. Apollo ends. 1975 to 1985. Sudden jumps in microchip and fiber optic technology. 1989, reports of anti-gravity research at Area 51, 2004, U.S. Navy patents on inertial mass reduction. 2016, Pentagon forms A8P, a UFO technology task force. Coincidence or a breadcrumb trail leading back to the moon? How did so many accidental technological leaps happen after we stopped going to the moon? Whistleblowers speak, from Roswell to Moon Tech. Many former intelligence officers, like Bob Lazar, have claimed that back-engineering alien craft is real, ongoing, and dangerous. Lazar's claims in the 1980s about element 115, a substance critical to gravity control, were laughed off until scientists created it in 2003. If he was right about that, what else was he right about? And could some of that tech have come from the moon? The Solar Warden link, a secret space fleet? In UFO conspiracy circles, Solar Warden refers to a clandestine space fleet run by a joint US-NATO operation. Allegedly using reverse-engineered propulsion, Solar Warden supposedly patrols Earth's orbit, maintains presence near the moon, engages in off-world surveillance. While unconfirmed, the idea gained traction after WikiLeaks documents hinted at classified interstellar programs. So if Solar Warden is real, what's it guarding us from? Or who? Scientific feasibility, can we replicate alien tech? Some scientists argue that if we had access to alien technology, we might not even understand it. It could be, based on physics we haven't discovered yet, using quantum field manipulation, or involve biomechanical hybrids that require non-human interaction. Yet, the human race has a history of adapting alien ideas. After all, we once thought flight was impossible, and now we send robots to Mars using calculations Einstein didn't even finish. So what if we're further along than we admit? Conclusion. What are we hiding and why? If we found alien tech on the moon, reverse engineering it would be the greatest scientific challenge of our time, the most tightly guarded secret of any government, and perhaps the most dangerous pursuit in human history. Because with technology like that, we could alter physics, we could redefine war, we could control the future. So now we must ask, did we really leave the moon empty-handed, or did we bring back a blueprint for the next evolution of humanity? Part 10, the final veil. What happens if the truth comes out? We've followed the whispers. We've chased the anomalies. We've listened to the silence between the signals. And now only one question remains. What if it's all true? What if there are secret moon bases? What if alien technology has been reverse engineered? And what if a global cover-up has shaped human history since 1969? But more important than what we've uncovered is this. What happens if the public finds out? The fragile social order. Can humanity handle the truth? Disclosure isn't just about UFOs or moon bases. It's about shattering a worldview. Think about it. Every government, every scientific institution, every religious doctrine, every economic model is built upon one shared assumption that humanity is alone in the universe. If that assumption collapses, what else falls with it? Mass panic, religious upheaval, financial collapse, or a new renaissance? Historical precedents when knowledge changed the world. When Galileo suggested Earth wasn't the center of the universe, he was imprisoned. When Darwin introduced evolution, entire belief systems were thrown into chaos. When atomic power was discovered, the world entered the nuclear age overnight. Now imagine a disclosure that dwarfs them all. We are not alone. We've known, and we've lied. What would you do? Leaks are accelerating. Is a slow reveal already underway? In the past 10 years, the Pentagon has admitted to UFO encounters. Whistleblowers have testified before Congress under oath. NASA has dropped subtle hints about non-human technology. Is this all part of a slow drip strategy? A psychological conditioning campaign? Prepare the masses not with a bang, but with a breadcrumb trail? Because if there's a secret base on the moon, it's going to be very hard to hide once commercial space flights go lunar. New players: can billionaires force disclosure? Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Richard Branson. These men aren't just chasing space for profit, they're racing to see something. Musk has hinted about things we can't talk about on the moon. Bezos's Blue Origin has filed classified lunar exploration patents. SpaceX's lunar plans are heavily partnered with the military. Why? Why the secrecy? And if one of them finds evidence of alien tech, will they tell us? Or will they be bought out, silenced, or worse? What would real disclosure look like? Imagine the president steps to the podium and says, "We have contact with a non-human intelligence. We have interacted with their technology. Some of it came from the moon." Would that unite the world, or would it fracture it? Could our species handle the implications? Or are we already being manipulated by non-human influence, slowly, silently? Moon base realities, what might they be doing up there? Let's imagine moon bases are real. What are their functions? Observation, spying on Earth, extraction, harvesting lunar materials or ancient alien artifacts, incubation, developing AI or biological hybrids in isolation, gateway to Mars or other star systems. And the more terrifying possibility, are we the ones operating them? Or is something else in control, and we're just caretakers? Scientific readiness: can Earth handle alien integration? If we had to integrate alien knowledge into human society, we'd face physics breakthroughs that break Einstein's models, energy systems that make oil, coal, and even solar obsolete, biological insights that question the very definition of life. Could our current science even process that? Or are some scientists already working with that knowledge, but under national security restrictions? Religious and philosophical impact. The moon has always held spiritual significance. But what happens when we say the moon is home to non-human intelligence? The moon is not what we thought. It's been used, colonized, hidden in plain sight. How does that change? Religion, meaning, the human soul? Would we still look up at the sky the same way? Final possibilities: truth and relation. Let's ask something darker. What if the conspiracy itself is the smokescreen? What if governments leak bits and pieces, not to prepare us for truth, but to distract us from another reality? What if the moon bases do exist, but the real question is, who built them and why? Are we hiding secrets from the public, or is someone hiding the truth from the governments themselves? Conclusion: the moon looks the same tonight as it always has. But behind its bright glow may be the greatest mystery in human history. So now we leave you with the questions. Do secret moon bases exist? Did we bring back alien technology? Are we being protected or controlled? And finally, if the truth came out tomorrow, would you even believe it? Thank you for joining the series Secret Moon Bases Exist. We've pulled back 10 layers of the unknown, but the mystery is far from over, because sometimes the most dangerous secrets aren't in space. They're right here on Earth. Stay curious, stay awake, and always question the silence. Thank you all for listening and sharing your thoughts. Much appreciated.